Jim Bob arrested. Jim Bob's house sold for $2.5 million, demolished. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. For Duggar family latest news update, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. It was a sunny morning in Tontatown, Arkansas, but the Duggar household was clouded with confusion, whispers, and a sense of disbelief. For decades, Jim Bob Duggar had been the face of the massive Duggar family, respected, feared, and admired by many for raising 19 children with firm values. But now, everything had come crashing down. News spread like wildfire. Jim Bob Duggar had been arrested. The breaking point started like any other day. Michelle Duggar was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the few children who still lived at home. Jim Bob had left early in the morning, supposedly for a business meeting. But hours later, FBI agents knocked on the door, their presence calm but their message explosive. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Jim Bob Duggar," one of them said. Michelle stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is this about?" she asked, confused and scared. "He's being investigated for financial fraud and illegal property dealings connected to a shady real estate company he secretly started 5 years ago," the agent explained. Secrets and lies. The news made headlines. More shocking details emerged. Jim Bob had allegedly funneled large sums of money through shell companies, all while claiming religious donations on his taxes. What's more disturbing, some of the properties he had invested in had environmental violations, and others were bought using forged documents. For years, Jim Bob had maintained the image of a conservative, God-fearing man. But behind the scenes, he had been living a double life, chasing wealth, manipulating paperwork, and keeping secrets even from his own family. Michelle's betrayal. What truly shocked the nation wasn't Jim Bob's arrest, it was Michelle's response. Just days after his arrest, Michelle released a statement to the press. "I have known something was wrong for a long time. I tried to get him to open up, but he shut me out. I begged him to be honest with me and our children, but he refused. I cannot support what he has done, and I will not stand by him in court." Fans and critics alike were stunned. Michelle, who had once proudly stood beside her husband through every scandal and controversy, was now turning her back on him. She had contacted a real estate agent to sell the family home, a massive estate estimated at $2.50 million. The children react. The Duggar children had mixed reactions. Jessa was heartbroken but refused to speak to the media. Jill, who had been estranged from the family, wrote on Instagram, "Truth always comes out. I pray for healing and accountability. No one is above the law." Jinger, living in California, was reportedly devastated but said she had suspected things weren't right for years. Josh, whose own criminal past haunted the family, remained silent. Many of the younger children were shielded from the chaos, but the older ones were left to pick up the pieces, selling the mansion. Within weeks, real estate photos of the Duggar mansion were published online. The sprawling home that once echoed with laughter, prayers, and daily chores was now empty, its rooms stripped of memories. Kitchen where Michelle had cooked countless meals, the boys' dormitory Jim Bob proudly built, all were now just spaces waiting for new owners. The house was listed for $2.5 million, and a wealthy buyer from Texas quickly showed interest. Property, despite its history, was a stunning piece of land. By the end of the month, the house was sold. A chapter closed. Courtroom drama. Jim Bob appeared in court handcuffed and pale. Courtroom was filled with reporters, family members, and legal teams. His lawyers argued that he was being framed, but the prosecution presented detailed documents, emails, and testimonies from former employees. Michelle did not attend. Instead, she was seen at a local women's Bible study group, quietly holding her Bible and talking to friends. When asked by reporters if she would ever forgive Jim Bob, she simply said, "I forgive him as a Christian. But as a wife and mother, I will not forget what he's done to this family." A family divided. The Duggar brand was over. TLC, which had already canceled their shows long ago, released a statement. "We are saddened to hear of the ongoing troubles within the Duggar family. We hope they can find healing and peace." Merchandise sales, book royalties, and even YouTube ad revenue began to drop. The once powerful Duggar name was now associated with scandal and betrayal. Children began going their separate ways. Some changed their last names legally. Others started therapy. And a few even publicly denounced their father's teachings. New beginnings. Months later, Michelle was spotted in a smaller home in rural Arkansas. Rumors suggested she was starting a ministry for single mothers and had even filed for separation, a near unthinkable move in Duggar family tradition. Jim Bob, on the other hand, remained under house arrest awaiting trial. The judge had frozen many of his accounts, and legal experts predicted a potential 10 to 15-year sentence if convicted on all counts. The once mighty patriarch was now isolated, broken, and disgraced. Final thoughts. The fall of Jim Bob Duggar sent shockwaves through not only his family but also the Christian conservative community that once idolized him. His arrest revealed the dangers of unchecked power and blind loyalty. And Michelle's decision to walk away, both emotionally and physically, was a moment of liberation, not just for her but for many women who had felt silenced in similar relationships. As the world watches the aftermath, one thing is clear: the Duggar legacy will never be the same. The day the world stopped for Jill and Derek. The rain tapped gently against the hospital window, like 1,000 tiny tears falling from the sky. Inside the pale green walls of room 208, Jill lay still, her hand resting softly on her swollen belly, where just hours ago a life had grown, kicked, and fluttered with dreams of the future. But now it was quiet, too quiet. Derek sat at her bedside, his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs that refused to be silenced. He wasn't a man who cried easily. But this was a pain that shattered every defense, broke every dam, and brought even the strongest man to his knees. Their baby girl was gone, stillborn at 38 weeks. Jill had gone into labor on a Sunday morning. Everything seemed normal at first. The baby had been healthy through every checkup. They had decorated the nursery, painted the walls a soft lilac, folded tiny pink onesies, and even recorded a video for their YouTube followers, sharing their excitement. Her name was to be Hope Elise Dillard because we've waited and prayed, Jill had said in that video, smiling, her hand over her bump. And no matter what happens, there's always hope, the beginning of the end. Contractions began around 6 a.m. Jill had felt a tightening in her back, followed by a flutter of anticipation. She and Derek laughed as they rushed to the car, filming little clips between contractions. The hospital staff welcomed them warmly. They were used to seeing happy couples come in filled with excitement, but as the nurses connected the fetal monitor, a frown crossed one of their faces. There was no heartbeat. Maybe it was a glitch? A tech issue? They moved the sensors, checked again. Jill's smile faded. She looked at Derek, who was trying to stay calm, trying to believe that everything was okay. Then the doctor came in. His voice was kind but firm. Jill, I'm so sorry. We couldn't find a heartbeat. We confirmed it with ultrasound. Your baby girl has passed. The room spun, Jill screamed. Derek staggered backward, his breath stolen by the weight of those words. Time slowed down. Everything else, the lights, the beeping machines, the sterile smell of antiseptic, faded into a blur. A birth without a cry. They still had to deliver her. That was the cruelest part. Jill, exhausted and hollow, was induced. Hours passed like shadows creeping across the floor. Family came, holding hands and praying. But no one could touch the pain that filled the room. And then she was born, tiny, beautiful, perfect but silent. No cry, no breath, just stillness. They wrapped her in a soft blanket and placed her in Jill's arms. She looked just like their other son, same nose, same mouth. Jill kissed her forehead, tears spilling freely. Derek stood beside them, cradling his daughter with trembling hands, whispering, I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. Grief in a hospital room. For hours they sat there, holding Hope, memorizing every inch of her. Nurses brought a tiny ink pad to take her footprints. They took photos. A volunteer came in to make a memory box, complete with a lock of her hair, a hand-knitted hat, and a small angel figurine. Jill didn't want to let go. How do I say goodbye when I never got to say hello, she whispered. Derek didn't answer. He couldn't. His heart was breaking beside hers. Outside, fans and well-wishers were already beginning to send messages. News had started to spread. The Duggar family was well known. The cameras weren't there, but the world was watching. But in that room, none of it mattered. Aftermath. Jill was discharged 2 days later, physically healed but emotionally wrecked. She walked out of the hospital without a car seat, without a baby. Just a soft blanket they had taken from the crib. Back home, the nursery was ready. Crib made, clothes folded, diapers stacked. The scent of baby powder filled the air, and Jill collapsed on the floor, clutching a teddy bear, screaming into the silence. Their sons, Israel, Samuel, and Frederick, didn't understand. Not really. They had been excited to meet their baby sister. Now they just knew that Mommy cried all the time and Daddy barely spoke. Faith-tested, Jill had always leaned on her faith. But now her prayers felt like echoes in an empty room. Why, God, she asked over and over. Why give us a child only to take her away? The Bible sat untouched on the nightstand. She stopped filming content for weeks. Social media turned into a blur of sympathy messages, and while many were kind, others were cruel. God has a reason. Those words cut like knives. Derek tried to be strong, for Jill, for the boys, but even he found himself yelling at God in the middle of the night. This isn't fair. We did everything right. We loved her. Rebuilding slowly. It took weeks before Jill left the house. Took longer to step into the nursery. Even longer to say her daughter's name without breaking, but healing, as it often does, came slowly. Like sunlight after a long, dark storm, she began journaling. Every night she wrote letters to Hope. Dear Hope, I missed you today. Derek started planting a garden in the backyard. In the center, he placed a small stone that read, Hope Elise Dillard, loved beyond words, missed beyond measure. They began attending a grief support group for parents who had lost children. There, Jill met other mothers, some older, some younger, all carrying the same invisible wound. In their stories, she found fragments of comfort, and one day she picked up her Bible again. She didn't find answers, but she found peace. Going public after 2 months. It was a photo of a small pair of pink baby shoes and a caption, Our hearts are shattered, but we wanted to share the story of our daughter, Hope Elise. She was born sleeping on July 14th. Though she never took a breath, she changed our lives forever. We miss her every second. We thank you for your prayers and love. The response was overwhelming.